There was a time when silence wasn't just common, it was sacred. People didn't speak because they had nothing to say. They stayed quiet because something inside them warned, don't ask, don't look too closely, don't pull the thread. Everything looked fine on the surface. Smiles in advertisements, celebrations on the news, motivational posters on office walls screaming, "You're doing great." But beneath that polished surface, there was a quiet ache, like a dull pain you've learned to live with. You felt it, didn't you? The strange emptiness in conversations that never touched the truth, the way certain questions made rooms colder, the way your heart beat faster when your thoughts wandered where they weren't supposed to. No one told you to stop thinking. They just made sure thinking never got rewarded. You were trained, not taught, conditioned, not educated. You were shown how to pass tests, not how to challenge systems. And the moment your curiosity burned a little too bright, they handed you distractions, notifications, entertainment, outrage, endless loops of noise to smother the whisper that said, something's wrong. It wasn't change they used to hold you. It was comfort, because comfort is silent. Comfort doesn't argue. Comfort doesn't question the hand that feeds it. It just makes you forget how to run, how to rebel, how to remember what fire feels like. And in the name of peace, they gave you war disguised as safety. They gave you order that required obedience. They gave you peace that demanded you surrender your voice. They made doubt the enemy and obedience a virtue. But here's the secret they never wanted you to learn. The more they buried your questions, the louder they became. The more they tried to drown that flicker of awareness, the brighter it burned. Until one day, you couldn't ignore it anymore. The patterns, the lies, the emptiness dressed up as truth. You weren't crazy. You were just awake in a world that rewards sleep, and those who played with fire were terrified of the moment you'd realize the fire was never theirs to control. It was always yours. They say history repeats itself, but that's not true. History doesn't repeat, people do. Power never had to reinvent itself. It just had to wait. Because time and again, the formula worked. Create fear, offer protection, then demand loyalty. Not loyalty to truth, but to narrative. The kind that turns neighbors into enemies, questions into crimes, and innocence into fuel. You've seen it dressed as fascism, where symbols replaced souls, where the loudest voice became law, and silence became survival. You've seen it wear the mask of revolutions, where the oppressed became the new tyrants, rewriting morality to suit the mob. Promises of justice curdled into purges, and once again the fire burned the wrong ones. Sometimes it came with flags, sometimes with scripture, sometimes with smiles. But it always came. The tools never changed. Propaganda wasn't a glitch. It was the blueprint. Rewrite history, and you control memory. Control memory, and you control identity. And once you own someone's identity, you own their obedience. They made truth subjective. They fed people illusions that felt more comforting than reality. And the masses, scared, tired, looking for someone to blame, followed. Not because they were evil, but because they were afraid. And fear is the perfect soil for control to grow. Empires fell not because they were weak, but because they believed they were gods. But even gods fall. The same patterns etched across every continent, every ideology, every promised utopia. And yet, every time people said, this time will be different, it never was, because power doesn't corrupt. It reveals. And when you give it to those who've never faced their own darkness, they project it onto the world. The innocent burn, and the crowd claps, not out of cruelty, but because they believe it's justice. They believed it in Nuremberg. They believed it in the gulags. They believed it on the plantations, in the temples, in the courtrooms soaked with innocent blood. They always believe until the fire comes for them. There was a time when the truth set people free. Now, it gets you crucified. Not because people no longer believe in truth, but because they've forgotten how to recognize it. They've replaced it with something easier, softer, a version of reality tailored to their comfort zones and curated timelines, a mirror that reflects only what flatters them. But what happens when that mirror cracks? They run, not away from lies, but away from themselves. The greatest enemy isn't the system. It's the self that refuses to wake up. Because waking up means questioning the stories we built our lives on. It means admitting we might have been wrong about who we trusted, what we believed, what we defended. And that kind of honesty, it hurts more than any lie ever could. So instead, we choose fiction over friction. We choose dopamine over discipline. We choose curated truths, echoed by our chosen tribe, wrapped in self-righteousness and fed to us in endless scrolls. We've reached a point where facts don't matter. What matters is how those facts make you feel. If a truth makes someone uncomfortable, it must be oppressive. If a lie makes them feel empowered, it must be liberation. This isn't ignorance, it's self-protection. Because the truth doesn't just challenge what you think, it challenges who you are. And most people aren't ready to meet that version of themselves in the mirror. Cognitive dissonance becomes a shield, an armor against awakening. The louder the truth screams, the tighter they close their eyes. We've gaslit ourselves into extinction. They tell you, live your truth. But what they really mean is live your comfort. Because the real truth, it doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't bend to ideology or emotion. It stands silent, brutal, undeniable. And for that, it is hated. We were raised in systems that taught us not to think, but to memorize. Not to question, but to comply. And now that the curtain's being pulled back, we don't celebrate the revelation. We attack the one pulling it. Reality became a threat, not because it changed, but because we did. We got used to filters. Not just on our photos, but on our lives, on our memories, on our history, on our morals. Everything needed to be touched up, polished, beautified. Even our flaws were turned into brands. Even our trauma became content. So when someone comes along and shows us the raw footage, no edits, no music, no filters, we flinch, because real is ugly, and pain is inconvenient. But truth isn't meant to soothe you. It's meant to shape you, to burn through the lies you built your comfort on and forge something stronger. The masses weren't brainwashed with force. They were seduced by convenience, offered peace if they just agreed to stop thinking. And when that offer comes wrapped in community, in shared outrage, in viral posts that affirm your every thought, resistance becomes rebellion. And rebellion gets cancelled. It's not conformity we fear anymore. It's isolation, because standing alone with the truth feels terrifying. Safer to sink with the crowd than to swim against it. Safer to mock the truth teller than admit they might be right. So we mock. We meme, we cancel. We bury reality under layers of sarcasm and distraction, hoping no one notices how hollow we've become. But in the silence, in the rare moments between the noise, we feel it. The fire creeping up the walls, the heat behind the distractions, the knowing in our gut that something isn't right and hasn't been for a long time. That's when the mirror appears again, and this time, it doesn't ask for answers. It all demands surrender. They thought silence would save them. That if they kept their heads down, if they smiled enough, reposted the right slogans, nodded at the right lies, they could avoid the flames. But fire doesn't ask for your permission. It consumes everything in its path, especially cowardice. This is where the reckoning begins, when the lies no longer hold, when the stories collapse under their own weight, when the masks they wore for comfort begin to suffocate them. They told themselves they were just surviving. But survival without a spine is just slow surrender, and now everything they once ignored has returned, louder, uglier, and unforgiving. The voices they silenced, the doubts they buried, the questions they mocked, they've come back, not as whispers, but as screams echoing in the cracks of a broken world, because reality doesn't forget. You can delay truth. You can distract from it. You can punish those who speak it. But you cannot destroy it. And when it returns, it doesn't knock politely. It kicks down the door. We were warned, not by prophets or politicians, but by the quiet unease we felt in moments of honesty, by the chill in our spine when something didn't add up, by the way we looked away from truth because we feared what it might demand of us. This was never about politics, or culture, or identity. This was about the soul, about a human spirit that was traded for convenience, about integrity exchanged for applause, about people who played with fire thinking they were immune to the burn because they had privilege, platforms, followers. But the fire does not discriminate. It doesn't care if you were silent or loud, woke or asleep, follower or leader. If you stood by while the world was manipulated, you're part of the reckoning, because neutrality is fiction. In the face of manipulation, silence is complicity. The ones who burned others to stay warm now feel the temperature rising, and the ones who lit the match, they always believed they'd be the exception. They weaponized media, language, and morality. They turned truth into hate speech. They turned oppression into virtue. They played chess with people's minds, assuming no one would notice. But the board flipped, and now they're the ones cornered. Because you can only manipulate for so long. Eventually, the weight of your own deception collapses the very illusion you were hiding in. And when the dust clears, there's no applause, no audience left to clap. Just the ashes of a world built on denial, and the deafening silence of consequences finally arriving. This isn't punishment, it's return. A return to cause and effect, to the price of compromise, to the truth they spent lifetimes avoiding. They played with fire. Now let them burn in it. And in the end, the question remains, who will rise from the ashes? The fire has consumed everything in its path. The false promises, the illusions, the pretensions of safety and control. Now we're left with a world stripped bare, raw, vulnerable, and yearning for truth. But from the ashes, something always rises, a new world, a new understanding, or a return to the same cycle. What we saw, what we felt in the heat of the flame, it changes you. You can't go back. You can't unsee the lies once they've burned away. So who will rebuild? Will it be those who avoided the flames? Those who kept their distance, convinced their privilege could protect them? Will they rise from the ashes, trying to take control once again? Or will it be the ones who stood in the fire, who saw the truth and didn't flinch, who faced the consequences, not with fear, but with resolve? Because there are those who play with fire, and there are those who learn from it. The ones who burn are the ones who are forced to confront the darkness. And in that darkness, they find clarity, they find strength, they find the courage to rise again, not as puppets of a broken system, but as agents of their own destiny. The ones who rise from the fire are not the ones who sat idle, waiting for the storm to pass. They're the ones who walked through it, embracing the heat, and emerged stronger. This is the final choice. Do you fear the fire, or do you wield it? The world is being shaped by those who understand the cost of power, who know that the fire does not discriminate, who understand that the flames of destruction can forge something beautiful, something pure, if you're willing to face them. The truth is this: fire doesn't destroy, it transforms. It burns away the excess, the falsehoods, the corruption. It leaves only what is real, what is pure. But that transformation, that rebirth, is painful. And for some, it will be too much. But for others, for those who are brave enough to face the consequences, to rebuild from the ashes, to confront the truth and take responsibility, they will rise, not just from the fire, but through it. So, as the flames begin to settle, ask yourself, will you rise with them, or will you be left to watch as the world burns, knowing you were too afraid to play with fire? When you had the chance, the choice is yours. Will you rise from the ashes, or remain consumed by the flames?